So Tom, I appreciate you jumping on here. I'll kind of take it from here. You and I recorded a segment here a couple months ago when Nick Brooks committed, and of course you don't have some crystal ball to foresee the future, but I remember us having this discussion about his future and how solid his commitment to Iowa was. And I remember making the comparison to the Caden Proctor situation, and you kind of said, "Oh, well, let's treat this uniquely. Is not Caden Proctor. I don't think his focus is maybe where Caden Proctor's family's focus was, and etc. The circumstances are just different, and I'm sure you wouldn't change your tune on that
Yeah.
note. But the news today that Nick Brooks is decommitted from Iowa, I think blindsided a lot of people. We knew he came off an official visit to Texas Tech. Were you surprised by this news, and how have things changed within just a couple of months?
Wasn't surprised once I saw he took a visit because here's what I think. I think the kid just wants to take more visits, and in order to take more visits and still stay in the good graces of the place where he may end up going, the University of Iowa, he just decommitted. I think that's really just all this was at this point is a kid that wanted to see more places, take more visits, and in order to do that, he had to decommit. So um, I don't know that there's really a whole lot more behind it than that. I don't know that there were bags of money or deals or anything. It just seems like the kid wants to. It was curious last week when he put up the thing about Texas Tech offering him. Usually that's an indication, and then he shows up on Instagram down in Lubbock, and there you go. So we'll see what happens from here. But again, he's a 2025 kid, so we're a year and a month plus from him being able to sign anywhere.
So it's nothing about a bag of Lubbock loot.
Yes.
You don't
Yeah,
think
I think Iowa probably communicated with them, hey, if you want to take visits, you can take visits, but just let us know. And if you want to take them, just it's probably best that you just decommit and it's like if you're going to get married. If you're going to get married, you can't go out on dates with other people. So Iowa looks at commitments like that as like a marriage. And if you want to date, you can go ahead and date, but we're not going to consider ourselves married to you anymore either.
so. I know that brings up a whole new can of worms for me, Mark or Tom. So excuse me, because Caden Proctor took a bunch of visits as he was committed. So just explain to the common fan why he was allowed to do that while staying engaged to Iowa and Nick Brooks was not.
Well, it's not like being allowed. It was just, hey, if you want to do it the right way, this is how you do it.
Okay.
Proctor probably just said, I just going to go ahead and do these things. They communicated to him that those exact same things. Brooks is just going to be more upfront about it and just decide to decommit.
Does that make sense, Mark?
Well, it sounds like that there are different standards for different talent levels or something. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but there seems to be a strong preference toward wanting that commitment to stick at Iowa, and I can certainly respect that because otherwise, why commit? I've always wondered that. If you're not sure, then don't commit.
Mm-hmm. That's the thing I always come back to. If you've got any wavering, it's not like you're reserving your place. If you want to, I use the marriage analogy. Kirk Ferentz uses it too. It's just like, are we holding hands or are we getting married? And if you want to hold hands and you want to go out on other dates, perfectly fine. And Iowa can't prevent someone from doing that. And kids could take up to 10 visits now. And if you do that, that's fine. But we're also going to go on dates. We're going to go pursue some other guys in that class that now that spot's open. And that's probably what I was saying right now is, all right, we'll find some other old linemen that maybe we had already kind of started to move on from because we got this kid committed. Maybe we'll look at guys and see if they're interested in coming on campus and getting visits in.
A couple things I just want to add on to this. So I don't know if it was my conversation with you, Tom, or I know we talked to Elliot Clough from the Iowa Rivals site when this occurred, when the commitment happened. But one of you told me that at the time you expected him to take these other visits. Maybe that wasn't you, Tom. Maybe that was Elliot that said that. But again, I go back to that. If he was expected to take the other visits when he committed, what has changed? But I also wonder, is there maybe more of with what happened with Caden Proctor in that situation, maybe a little bit of a different approach to communication from Iowa than prior, just to not have a repeat of what happened with Proctor?
Well, I know that Iowa told him when he committed, hey, these are kind of the expectations. If you commit, this is kind of how we view things. We're not going to go out and recruit other guys or for your spot. We're not going to dump you for another guy. You're committed. We're committed. We're going to move forward together. But we also have an expectation that you don't go out on visits with other programs and, potentially pursue those programs, or that let those programs continue to pursue you. It's a two-way street. Iowa's not going to do their recruiting anymore. They just consider that spot full, or filled, I should say, not full, but filled. And they expect the kid to honor that. And I don't think that's an unfair ask. I don't, but I just don't think they should. Just don't commit.
Right.
Wait.
Yeah.
If you're good enough, they'll hold a spot for you.
Well, I guess again, I keep saying two things to follow up on that, Tom. He, and I don't want to over dissect this, and maybe I'm known for doing this, but with Nick Brooks, I think it's fair to say, regardless, maybe he ends up back at Iowa. That's fair, and I'd much rather, as an Iowa guy, I'd much rather him make this decision, this announcement now than on signing day or the signing week, as Caden Proctor did. But I think it's clear he would not have committed. Like, he's not in the same place he was when he committed. So, we're not saying that. I think it's fair to say you're not saying, Tom, that he's definitely a Hawkeye now, because we felt like when he committed that, hey, if he's taken on these expectations that Iowa has for him, he's a Hawkeye. And now that's in doubt again.
And that's the other thing with trying to compare it to Caden. I mean, Caden was right at the end of the process where he was running around Oregon and Alabama. And this kid's, like I said, he's 14 months or, 13 months from signing anywhere.
Right.
So there's just a lot more time where you can say, all right, let's just slow things up here. Let's call off the engagement. Let's see what's out there, and we can always come back to each other. And I think that's what they're going to do. And Iowa will probably still continue to recruit him, as they should. And he will probably continue to show up at Iowa things, as he probably should. But you wonder, the one thing you do have to wonder about is, was there any damage to that relationship? Or did people just kind of understand now that, hey, this is just how the game's done? And to be honest, since I'm positive that Iowa told him since he took the visit, hey, this is the action you should probably take if you want to continue to take visits, and he's doing that. And he's receptive to this is the way I need to do it. I think there's a decent chance for reconciliation down the road.
Do you believe that there's any link, Tom, to Brian's dismissal, maybe some uncertainty regarding George Barnett, anything like that at all, or maybe even Kirk Ferentz?
No, I don't think there's anything to that, especially, Brian wasn't really involved in his recruitment. It was just mainly George. And I've not gotten any hint of or whiff of George Barnett's job is in jeopardy at all.
I am curious, Mark, I want to get your opinion on this, and we can go back to Tom for one final thing. And we want to, if he's got time to answer a question in the press conference today, great. But Mark, Tom mentioned, the expectation from Iowa's side, and I understand it, that once you're committed, they don't feel like they should have to continue to recruit you. But I mean, is that fair to you? I mean, I know maybe that makes sense to us, but in this era with NIL and the transfer portal and power to the players, I mean, I agree. A commitment should be a commitment, but reasonably, we all understand decommits happen all the time. Wouldn't it be in your best interest to continue to recruit a player hard, even all the way up to signing day, even if he commits 13 months or 15 months prior to signing day?
Well, I think there's a difference between what is fair and what's effective. So I know Dabo Sweeney at Clemson is very hard line about he doesn't want any commitments from anyone and will not allow them to. And when I say allow, that's not something that he can enforce, but he's very firm about, don't be taking any other visits once you've committed, because we take that very seriously. Now, is that going to be an effective way to recruit going forward? Probably less than it has been in the past. And with a coach the level of Dabo Sweeney or Kirk Ferentz, they can certainly get away with what others can't because of the level of coach and their reputation and their program. But I would think it's going to be less effective going forward because of all the options and just because of the way the recruiting game is played going forward.
And Tom, what I think of when I think of players like this, I think of Caden Proctor, Eno Benjamin. Now I think of Nick Brooks, and those, like, it's not like those guys just proved to be flops. I mean, we don't know. Proctor's, he's still playing his freshman year, but last I knew he was starting. Eno Benjamin was, breaking all kinds of records in the Pac-12. So I mean, like, is it fair? Like, how do you feel about the critics that would say that's kind of an antiquated way of stubborn way of looking at recruiting if you're Kirk Ferentz?
Well, let me clarify something. I don't mean to say that Iowa stops recruiting those kids once they're committed. They continue to recruit them just as hard as if they were uncommitted. So let me just I don't want people to think that, oh, well, they just get them committed and then they just sit them off to the side. That's not how it works. They're still calling them every week. They're still sending them notes. They're still getting them on campus. They're still going to their schools. They're still doing all of those things that you have to do to recruit a kid. They're not just putting them off to the side. I don't think it really. Fire your question back at me again.
Well, I'm just curious. Do you feel like there's an argument that could be made that it's a little bit antiquated to expect a committed student athlete now just to say, nope, I'm not taking visits, even if Alabama or Texas calls?
It is. I think it's a hard way to do business. It's a choice. But I think also tell those kids and their parents, hey, if you want to still engage in the recruiting process, that's perfectly fine. Just decommit. Just open things up. Because if you're going on those visits, if you're dating, you're not married to us anymore. I think it's fair. I think it's fair from both sides. I think it's fair for kids to take more visits. And I think it's fair for Iowa to tell them, then just decommit. We can still recruit you. We'll still, keep dating. But I think it offers clarity for both sides.
Kind of feels like a formality, doesn't it? Like, you're committed, but you're taking more visits. So, like, okay, are you technically committed? Are you technically decommitted? Like, what's the difference at this point? Guys are not actually locked in. It's like being engaged until you sign the dotted line and put that ring on your partner's finger. It's like legally, you're not bound. So, but anyways, you had a question, I know, Mark.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask an overall recruiting question. We are 5 weeks away from National Signing Day, the early signing day. So not just from a talent standpoint, but from a positional needs standpoint, do you think Iowa's in line, Tom, for a strong class? How would you rank this class? Not, maybe specifically. Oh, we lost Tom.
I don't think he liked your question, Mark.
He didn't like where I was going with that, I guess. I don't know.
That doesn't bode well for the 2023 class. I'll tell you that, or 2024 class.
He didn't want to face the music, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'll ask you. You're pretty heavy in the recruiting game, and I think Tom's going to jump back in with us. There we go. Probably one of those deals with the phone, I'm guessing. Tom, I'm not trying to not be too offended by you cutting out of my question.
No, I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button. I was pulling up the recruiting list and I hit the button to that link, and I was like, uh-oh, that's not right. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, just basically, if you believe that I was headed toward a strong class, not just from a
Yeah.
talent standpoint, from a positional need standpoint.
Yeah, I do. I think it's about where you think a Kirk Ferentz class is going to be. It's we have them ranked 33rd in the country, a little low at 10th, but they've got 20 commits in the 2024 class. Good in-state group, filled a lot of needs. They've got all their different the different positions that they usually try to hit: offensive line, defensive line, some tight ends. Really like the tight end group. Like KJ Parker, an athlete they got from Immaculate Conception High School in Elmhurst, Illinois, that former Hawk Matt Bowen coaches at. Had a good in-state running back that got hurt during the year in Brevin Dahl. James Reeser is the quarterback in the class, but I think it's a pretty solid group. It's not. It's kind of what you expect from an Iowa recruiting class. Is what I'm getting at.
I think just throw my 2 cents in. You know a lot better than I do, Tom, but I get the feeling, I've gotten the feeling since they both committed, that maybe, assuming Brevin heals up as he should, that he and Michael Burt maybe are my 2 underrated prospects.
Yeah.
I'm not into recruiting rankings or anything, but I mean, those guys popped off just watching them.
Yeah, Derek Weiskopf is another kid from Williamsburg, who I think's a stud. I'm the position group I'm really intrigued by is the defensive line, because they've got a couple of guys that I'm like, boy, these guys are really intriguing. Joseph Anderson, the kid from St. Louis, and also Kennedy, the other Devin Kennedy, the other defensive end from Phoenix. I'm just super intrigued by both those guys, and I think Gavin Hoffman, the tight end from Overland Park, Kansas, is another kid that potential, early impact guy. And I'm really interested in Drew Campbell, the younger brother of Jack, and see how he's going to be.
And
a different position, different type player, but got a good bloodline there.
The athleticism, you talk about those defensive linemen, Tom. I mean, you mentioned Kennedy, and I mean even Chima, right? Chineke.
Yeah. Chineke Chima. Yeah.
He's kind of raw. They've got some good athletes.
I look at those guys as like a big piece of clay that
Yeah.
you can mold, and they're all 3 of those guys are kind of like the long arm, long levered kind of players that you can build up, and it might take them 2 years, 3 years to really get going, but I think there's a chance that those guys could be pretty good.
Kind of like a couple of those guys. I mean, when I'm watching Chineke, of course, I've never seen him in person, but I mean, he kind of reminds me of maybe a bigger version of now, man, my mind totally blanked on me. Former linebacker that moved to edge. Help me out on this, Tom. Special teams guy from several years ago that was kind of acted like he was on roids. Who's the guy? Who am I thinking of? The guy that was I think he was 52. He wore number 52, and he moved from linebacker to edge, I think, his senior year, and he was always making plays on kick coverage. Man, I can't think of who I'm at the top of my mind. Anyways,
drawing a blank. Some of these guys, they remind me more of like Chauncey Golson, just in terms of their frame and length.
Bigger,
And Chauncey's carving out a really nice career with the Cowboys right now.
Yeah, he is. Absolutely. Tom, before we let you go, I do want to ask you.
Sure.
I know you were there in person, and I'm not part of the Tuesday press conferences. Was there anything today to take from Kirk's presser that you thought was of note? I mean, it sounds like, I think the major topics, Caleb Johnson, that's the one that I think most people are intrigued by, why he didn't play on Saturday. And Kirk kind of brought up, just practice. We play our best guys. There's no drama there. But, in saying that, you kind of create a little bit of drama, because it sounds like maybe he did something in practice, or, the fact that he gets no snaps from being the starter week 1. Apparently he was healthy. That's obviously a question mark. And then, of course, the Cooper DeJean topic. Kirk's not going to probably give us much. I know I think you were the one that asked that question, weren't you?
I
Just
did.
about number of snaps he can handle. So what popped off the transcript for you?
I think, I had to ask about Cooper because he's just, everybody's curious. How much are you going to play him? How many snaps can you give that kid? And can you use him differently? Can you use him beyond just the little jet sweep motion thing? Can you put him in a wildcat? Could you do that? I knew the answer to that one. Unfortunately, I just had a feeling he was going to shoot down that one for sure. I'd probably have gotten a snort if I would have asked about the wildcat. But I just think you got to figure out ways to get that kid the ball, And I know Kirk rattled off, well, he's on all the special teams and he's on playing every defensive snap and all the things he was just basically telling us, we'll probably throw him out there for a couple of plays, is what he was telling us today.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
I think it's great that he played. And I think I agree with you, Tom. The idea of him a Wildcat, we've talked about that as a Wildcat quarterback during our postgame shows, just what he would bring being a former quarterback in high school. I just don't know. Here's what I don't know, Tom. As great of an athlete as Cooper is, and I know there's a fear about injuries, I also wonder if this is not a rip on Brian or Kirk or anybody in this offensive staff. I do wonder, though, if this staff is creative enough to effectively use him, like to actually scheme up ways to get him involved. I do wonder that.
Sure. That's fair. I would just put him back there in the Wildcat and have him run a couple RPOs or
sure,
just to kind of run to the edge, maybe step back and fire the ball down the field and see what happens. That's what I would do.